Thanks, Chris. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to sponsor your inaugural webinar. It's very exciting to be here and be in the company of Andy Street and Martin and Justine and Majid. Just to start, really, 2020 was an important year for me because it was the first calendar year back in the Midlands, managing my family's business, Bradford Estates. My background before my return home was in UK commercial real estate investment and development, with the last 10 years spent as a partner at Quadrant, which I sort of came to about 10 years ago and developed it with two of my partners to become one of London's most respected property businesses. During my time there, we developed or were developing around 1 million square feet of prime London office buildings, and actually asset managed an extensive retail portfolio of over 2 million square feet with a few sort of Midlands names like the Gallagher Retail Park at Junction 9, the M6, near to the IKEA, and Star City, which most people will be familiar with, driving west on your left at, near the M6, Junction 6. Now, just turning to the sort of initial impacts of the pandemic for Bradford Estates. We were rather lucky, not judgment, I have to say, that we'd sort of pivoted to the world of remote working before COVID set in and moved to Microsoft 365, which now includes the sort of pervasive Teams video conferencing tool. I know we're on Zoom today, but that was very helpful to at least position ourselves for remote working. In terms of any staff who didn't have laptops, we purchased them when it looked like we were going to have to send everyone home, and really everyone was ready to go and set up at home with business interruption minimized. It was more of a dilemma with our building and maintenance team because we were trying to work out with, how to provide a safe working environment. I know the government rules allowed an exclusion for construction sites, but we really were treating that responsibility very seriously. So due to the sort of furlough scheme that came forward, and we weren't entirely clear about the health and safety position, we furloughed our building team for 6 weeks until we were comfortable with our employer responsibilities, and then brought them back to work as quickly as possible. I actually fell ill with COVID during the second half of March, having caught the virus from my first dinner with my future in-laws. They had been skiing in Austria, and who would have thought that, really? It was difficult times, those couple of weeks where I was sort of struck down. But the assistance of my estates and property directors who had recently joined actually full time from Stratton Parker, and the government support measures really helped to minimise, my stress levels during the illness, and I think contributed to a quicker recovery, to be honest. With the economic outlook at that time clouded with uncertainty, I decided to very quickly implement emergency budgeting processes, and we reduced expenditure and started conserving cash because we really didn't know how matters were going to turn out. Luckily, by the virtue of the sectors which we invest and operate in, these concerns were thankfully not realised. We've had minimal rent payment difficulties, and the farming and forestry industries have been relatively unaffected. A happy result also came out of the only real hardship faced by one of our tenants, and Vince Derry was unable to afford his cottage's rents because he'd been self-employed for a short while and therefore could not access the government's furlough scheme. But I managed to identify that he had a background in landscape gardening, so we offered him a contracting job in lieu of his rental arrears, and actually by virtue of his excellent workmanship, he's now actually become a full member of our team. So that's a sort of a happy story. On sort of reflection over the year, despite the many challenges, there's also been, for me and for our business, positive outcomes from the pandemic. I think remote working through using Teams and sort of WhatsApp has sort of encouraged our team to sort of collaborate more and communicate more readily, which I think has developed a more cohesion within our organisation and a feeling of more influence in the company's direction. I think also the slowdown in the company's general activities gave me the space to devote more time to engagement with key regional stakeholders over our J3 proposals and establish a broad coalition of support for them. And ultimately we could deliver up to 9,000 new jobs, 440 million GVA, as well as an educational campus on site. And that could be potentially operated by the University of Wolverhampton if have shown an interest. And it really sort of allowed me to highlight the scheme's potential, to join the West Midlands Interchange and Arden Cross at the HS2, future HS2 station as real pillars of economic development for the region. And as carbon emissions tumbled due to the lull in economic activity, I think public opinion has refocused onto a new baseline of a pursuit to zero carbon as soon as possible. And certainly Bradford Estates' ambitions to achieve net zero carbon operationally for J3 should contribute to this target and support the development of solar and electrical vehicle industries locally in the Midlands. Our recent decision also to move to sustainable methods of farming with a focus on a reduction in artificial fertilizers and sprays, alongside techniques to enhance carbon sequestration in the soil, should also contribute to the zero carbon drive. And I think all in all, the respite from constant traveling between meetings for me has given me time to pause, reflect, and plan where I'd like to position Bradford Estates for the opportunities coming out of this pandemic.